Welcome back, everyone, to the LawCast. I'm Chris Decentime, and this is Melanie Thorley. We're both solicitors here at MJT Law, and we're back for another week.
We are. Happy days. And we're still in the same place, so that's unusual for us.
It's not a weekly thing. We're not on the road or anything.
We're not on the road, and we're not doing this remotely, and, you know...
Well, we have done that as well.
Oh, my goodness. Fair. Yes, both of us have done this remotely. Yes, we're in the same place, and we're intending to be here forevermore. If anyone's got any lighting... updates for us or anything like that, we can adjust. Be kind.
Be brutal, I reckon. See, we went different ways there. We went very different ways.
We did go very different ways. Okay, peeps. Have you got anything today, or shall I start off?
You can start off. I do have something I want to speak about.
Do you?
Hit us.
Actually, I'm going to go a little bit completely, out of our range of understanding. The other day, I started looking at some other cases. And I was looking at these work health and safety cases.
Right, so...
wild!
For everyone out there, safety safety and kind of negligence sort of sits parallel to employment in many ways. It often happens in the same context, but a very different kind of law. Yeah,
and this is about contributory negligence. And I'm just going to kind of throw out a few cases because for those of you who don't know, lawyers read all the time, and we get lots of stuff sent to us, and we read most of it that's in relation to our particular space, but we really never ever read anything that's not. And that's because there's too much reading to be had for our space, let alone reading for others.
Can't learn it all.
Anyway, so I read these cases the other day, and this is all about work health and safety and contributory negligence. That's a really big term. So what it means is everyone knows what negligence is, doing the wrong thing kind of stupidly or on purpose.
Yeah, you owe a duty of care to someone and you breach that duty.
And you're just doing something naughty, and how much they contribute to the injury. And there's 5 cases in this one thing that I received. So this one hits the title, Scaffolding Contractor Fails to Provide Exclusion Zone and Safe System of Work. Now this labour hire truck driver was awarded $1.35 million.
So are we talking permanent? Permanent not being able to work.
Damages for spinal injury suffered when scaffolding bench fell on him from 3 stories. Permanently incapacitated. Does it say to what extent?
I think you can put 2 and 2 together. That's spinal and permanent injury, and I think you can probably...
It's crazy. So they hadn't created what they call an exclusion zone. So if something fell, there was no one there to get hurt, essentially. Yeah. And this chap was there. And he'd come to pick up the scaffolding. And the way the story goes is they've turned up, the scaffolding hasn't been down, because he's turned up as a truck driver to pick up the scaffolding.
Jumped out of the truck.
And it's still up there. Dude, what's going on? And he's been asked to help out.
Right. Which I'm sure he loved.
He's out there doing something under the scaffolding, and something falls. Hurts him. Crazy.
And
$1.35 million, dude.
Do you ever wonder when you see those types of cases, and we also get them in employment where someone is basically not able to work for a very long period of time? Does money truly...
it's really hard, isn't it?
Does money... Our system can't do anything else. I get that.
Well, what they're saying is...
Can it?
Well, what I assume they're doing is going, this guy earned X amount of dollars. He's not going to be able to work for X amount of time, so here is the money. You get it all up front. But what does he do with it?
Do
you take it on people who win lottery?
Well, because if you blow it, you can't.
They go bankrupt.
If it's gone, it's gone.
That's
right. You still can't work.
So how does this work? Do they get it all in one big lump sum? Thanks very much. I'll take the $1.35 million. I'm not going to invest it. I'm going to buy a car. I'm going to buy a boat. I'm going to buy a jet ski, and I'm going to go on a massive holiday. Thanks.
I don't profess to be a financial advisor or anything like that, but what I would imagine with most of them is to put someone else in charge of the money.
Well, you'd want to, wouldn't you? Because you'd actually be too dumb to use it. I know if someone handed me $1.35 million,
you might do a little bit of splurging.
Oh my goodness, we all do it, right? We buy a lottery ticket and go, ooh, what are we going to do with this money? I'm going to be a bit of a splurger, even though I know this money is only to compensate me for the work Wages. I won't be able to earn.
It's not to put you in a better position than you would have been.
So keep moving forward on this.
Yes, next crazy case.
1.1, the title is $1.1 million in damages employer totally relied on occupier's safe system with respect to faulty equipment. A concrete delivery driver suffered a back injury when a faulty slump stand was not tagged out. So what happened was a fellow employee had witnessed the slump stand slamming down on the platform earlier that day, had reported the matter as required, but nothing actually happened. And they didn't implement a safety system by failing to tag out the slump stand or anything like that, and allowed employees to just go ahead and use it. And yeah, this guy got a back injury from it. $1.1 million, dude.
Another big one.
Wow.
Similar. It would have to be similar kind of permanent injury sort of area. But what's your last one?
There's plenty of them. But I was just thinking about this. Worker crushed by rollaway seat sweeps. This is actually one of.
One is I've read that one as well, and that one is, I think, the best when it comes to how contributory negligence interplays in all of this. Because you can imagine that the chap who got hit by something standing under a scaffolding. I mean, he hasn't really contributed to that negligence.
He didn't do anything to that.
Didn't do. Maybe he ought to have known. I mean,
well, he probably ought to have said, "Dude, this is not my job. You haven't created an because when you're on these sites, you know what's right and what's wrong." And
if he's been a truck driver for 20 years,
yeah.
And it's still
and remember, peeps, we are talking about areas of the law you know nothing about. This one is the wildest, I think, out of all of them. Worker crushed by rollaway street sweeper. The employer failed to implement recommendations. So this was one where some woman was learning how to drive one of those motorised
street sweeper things.
Cleany uppy floory things that you see in the cities, and one of those large machines.
There's sort of a singular person kind of.
Yeah, and stop go type thing. These people apparently, these street sweepers apparently, keep these sweepers in neutral. So don't turn them off. Keep them in neutral while they go in and do stuff like pick up a coffee.
This particular person went into 7-Eleven.
And this woman went into a 7-Eleven and picked up a coffee. The whole thing kind of started moving.
She put the handbrake up.
She jumped in front of it to try and stop it.
So she's kind of... I think she was sort of trying to, as it was moving,
trying to get the handbrake
hop in at the same time.
But like you would with a car with the window down, maybe. Anyway, so she was crushed by this.
Fell under. Horrendous injury.
$1.6 million in damages.
What's your take on the fact that she was the one who put it into...
Threw herself into... Well,
she was the one who...
She was new at the job.
True. She was the one who also was trying to hop into a moving vehicle.
She was trying to hop into a moving... She's the one that left it in neutral instead of turning it off. Apparently it was a very common thing to be doing, and they should have installed, new work methods, installing safety alarms, all this sort of stuff, to warn and train drivers that this sort of thing was happening. Crazy. Look, I mean, it's easy to say she should have done something different on the day, but she's got this new job. It's running out of control. Of course, she's trying her best. Yeah, and she's not thinking of, am I going to get hurt? She's thinking, shit, this thing's running away. It's $1 gajillion. It's going to hurt somebody else. This needs to stop. And she's just, throwing herself into danger. Crazy.
I mean, it kind of reminds us a lot about what happens in many safety policies that we see all the time, which is, of course, the employer is going to take all possible precautions,
but this one didn't.
They didn't, and that's where they fell down.
That's where the $1.6 million comes from.
But in many ways, a lot of policies talk at length about putting your own safety as a premium.
Stop and think about this for 5 seconds.
Having a bit of a stop and think.
What I don't understand though is, like, when you ride on one of those jet skis, personal watercrafts, you fall off and you've got this thing around your wrist that pulls it off and the whole thing stops. This machine is sophisticated. Why isn't it sophisticated enough that you actually have to, you're on a treadmill.
Doesn't do that.
Everyone's been on a treadmill before, and we know in the gyms the treadmills have got those little tags that you're meant to put on your body, so if you fall off and go backwards, the whole thing stops.
No one wears them.
No one wears them.
I don't wear them.
I'm just...
I'm happy to admit that.
That's the last time you're going to that gym.
They now know.
Anyway, so I just wanted to bring up some of these really mad kind of work health and safety cases, and this kind of segues into a different area, which look, we do a fair amount of, coming back to employment, we do a fair amount of work in discrimination.
Yeah.
And I was at a conciliation recently where the conciliator said, we were acting for the employee, and the employer was, in our view, had discriminated against our client. And the conciliator said to us, employers know very well what their work health and safety requirements are, but they don't know what the discrimination requirements are, or anti-discrimination requirements, as the case may be. And you just look at this and you go, well, if they can do this, if they could do the sweep seat thing, they don't have the risk thing or the taggy thing, and they already know this is dangerous. It stands to reason we've got so much discrimination out there, and they just don't understand what the parameters are for that. If you can award someone $1.6 million for being injured in this way, it just really surprises me that you cannot, like, discrimination injuries are psychological and are hard to measure, but sometimes they can be just as damaging.
And then often, it's not unheard of to have similar types of compensation as well. So it's not right to say, well, the reason they take that more seriously is because there's more money in it, because there can be cases just as large as that. And I think in many ways it's also disingenuous for employers when they say, it's just too hard. Because a lot of, ask anyone that's in the construction or the mining industry and ask them about the lengths they go to about safety.
Yeah, crazy.
And rightfully so.
Yes.
They're not necessarily going above and beyond.
No,
they're just doing what they need to do.
Yeah.
And it's extremely onerous.
Oh, it's incredibly onerous.
They have to hire whole teams.
Yeah.
Not only to implement it but enforce it. It's almost at the core of what they do, and it would cost a fortune.
Well, this is really fascinating that you're mentioning the energy resource industry, because I'm going to segue from discrimination to this new concept of sexual harassment.
Yes.
I mean, yes. I'm calling it new, but of course it's not new. But it's got legs.
It's growing.
It's got momentum. It's
growing in momentum. You can feel it.
It does, and we've got some legislation that's been passed out there, and we know that just with bullying claims, it needs to happen more than once, and we've discussed this on the podcast before, where you can file a sexual harassment claim and it only needs to happen once. And we're really interested in how that's going to play out in reality.
Yeah. Because what does that mean for the actual employee?
Well, how does it, if it's all...
What do you order?
If it's only happened once, what do you do next? If it's happened and then it stopped, how do you fix it? Because it's already finished.
It's fixed.
Yeah, it's kind of from a legal standpoint. I'm not taking an emotional one, but yes, legal standpoint. So I'm just going to segue into the energy resource, and this is kind of really interesting. There's been this Western Australia FIFO industry kind of investigation or reports about sexual harassment in the workplace.
Yep.
And this is kind of really fascinating. So it says here, sexual harassment remains rife in the Western Australia fly-in fly-out industry, with women frequently having to endure appalling ranges of behaviour to a committee report tabled the State Parliament review. So they had this report, and this is what they said. And what really interests me is what's come out of this. Look, there's a bunch of recommendations. I'm just going to go over this really briefly, but ensure there are serious repercussions for any person who seeks sexual favours for advantage, including dismissal. And it's like, what? Are they not doing that at the moment? It just blows my mind.
There are some disciplinary matters where it's you can, and then there are others when you have to. And I would have thought that would be absolutely in the have to.
Well, this is a recommendation to fire the person, because what's been happening is the females have been working.
They move around.
They get moved, and we know another organisation that did that and got into an awful lot of trouble over the last couple of decades on that point. So it just blows my mind that and we're talking about saying to a female worker, I will give you that promotion, I'll give you that really cushy job, I'm going to give you this thing if you give me some type of sexual favour. And they're in these fly-in, fly-out environments, so they're in these dongas.
Yep.
And there's an expectation there's going to be, a prostitution type situation, and they're not getting fired.
Where do you even begin with that?
It's a recommendation, so
Where
it's
do you even
rife in the industry. Implementing moderate drinking standards for all FIFO accommodation sites. I've been to quite a few, and there's either the dry sites or one drink only sites. Moderate drinking standards should be absolutely already in place. It just blows my mind that these things aren't in place yet. Improve gender balance and specific focus on site level supervisor and management positions.
Yeah, I think that one's a really big one.
I think it's a big one.
It's the hardest one,
but
I think.
So tough, because if you've got all this stuff going on, you're not having workers who are female starting at that lower range so they can build up and feel comfortable being there. So you've got an entire decade or two of working on this to try and get some semblance of equality later. That's just mad.
Because you can't necessarily parachute people into management positions.
And establish several internal and external options for reporting sexual harassment and sexual assault incidents for obtaining support. The recommendation seems so obvious.
Low threshold.
Yeah, the low threshold.
Really low threshold.
I've been doing this already.
And it kind of goes back to what I was talking about before, where we do so much for safety, and when we're looking at those recommendations, they're not hard.
No.
Maybe the one about trying to get
the equality in the workplace,
that will be hard. We're there, but the rest, with a concerted effort, wouldn't be very difficult. It's just turning their mind to putting that as a central focus in the same way we would with safety.
Absolutely. And they've done some more recommendations. That's for the companies themselves. And then we're talking about the sites. So ways of preventing perpetrators of serious sexual harassment from finding re-employment at other sites or other companies, such as through industry-wide workers register and accredited program.
Now that's starting.
Fascinating.
Starting to get a little.
So like a
black book.
Yeah. Predator black book. Fascinating.
Well,
see, how does this work in reality? Because what will happen? You find someone sexually harassed by asking for sexual favours, perhaps creating, to the extreme, say, a prostitution ring, which I absolutely believe exists out there. And instead of firing, you fire them, but, actually this is all very unsavoury. You don't want it to get out. So you do a deal, sign a deed of settlement and release, and voila, you can't do this. Confidentiality.
Right, so it forms part of the exit negotiation. I think we'd find any types of matters which involve sexual harassment that would just be off the cards. I think settlements would just become absolutely off the cards. If there is that, but it might come as a surprise to many, but that type of black booking or official black booking isn't unheard of.
No.
In fact, lawyers have that.
We do. In fact, there was one that came up yesterday.
Yesterday, I got the email about it as well.
So we have a do not employ list as lawyers. So as a law firm, we have to look at this do not employ list and make sure that the person who's applying for the job isn't prohibited from doing so.
And we know,
fascinating.
Yeah, we know investment banking does the same.
True. It's very true.
Finance.
There's
I
a
believe
lot of
doctors
spaces.
do the same.
So this is really fascinating stuff. The other thing they're wanting to implement. So I find that first one really interesting. But then we've got this: develop acceptable standards for accommodation facilities, including security, lighting, locks, CCTV, and in the public area layout protections.
Again.
What?
Low threshold.
Low threshold.
Really low threshold.
So this is kind of going back to you wouldn't have been a solicitor at the time, but there was this massive issue going around in universities. You would have been maybe a university student.
I do remember this.
Yeah, universities becoming quite unsavoury spaces in the evenings.
Really unsafe.
For females who are trying to get from the library to this.
Yeah, because remember that universities are very much a 24-hour kind of place.
Yeah, and they were really dangerous spaces. And I recall, I'm a UQ graduate, and we have a real campus environment.
Quite very large.
Very large. It's got its own postcode, campus environment. And there were lots of sort of panic buttons around that you could press. I have no idea what might happen if you pressed one, but we had security zooming around, and I would hope that if we pressed the panic button, someone would find out and get there pretty quickly. But yeah, they were very unsavoury. So there's lots of CCTV, lots of really like bright lights, and there was also this kind of system where you could have a buddy that would take you from your home accommodation or from your car to your office space or to your to the library, just to kind of get you around from A to B to C to D. And it's fascinating that they're trying to implement this in a workplace.
And I actually couldn't be more in favour. I mean, and I'm going back in again, but people will say that the natural thing is, Melanie, that's really onerous.
It is very onerous.
We have to. Someone's going to walk you, who's paying for that?
Suck it up, princesses.
But it's important to note that the industry that they're in is not a small business industry.
No, it's not.
It's not, in fact...
And they have hundreds of employees.
Hundreds and hundreds.
And they're all living on site. So you've got to... And it is a community, and you've got to behave like it is a community. But I was thinking about this, and, yes, all this starts from the top and you have to filter it through, but... Well, let's take it back to the work health and safety requirement of each person is responsible. Let's get out there and say to some of these guys, will you be on call to help this female go from her the mess hall back to her room? Are you happy to take that role? If you're sitting around and she wants to head back, can you walk her? And have this kind of collegiate environment, making it more and more unsavoury. I mean, we see advertisements on TV about mates telling mates they shouldn't beat their wives or their girlfriends. Yep. We see this about mates telling mates they should, hold
stand up and be counted.
Yeah, I'm a cajillion years old, people, and when I was a kid in New Zealand, there was this advertisement which went, if you think you're seeing double and you're thinking to get into trouble, take a break. And it was about taking a break while drinking, and they also got their mates involved. Yeah. And there was a Say When campaign.
Yeah, I remember that in Australia as well.
Yeah, and why not have something like that to make everybody kind of more open to the idea of being more helpful in these spaces?
I think it's
make it embarrassing for these guys. Make them stop talking about it in the mess hall as something funny.
I'll throw a bit of a spanner in there.
Go on.
What about putting a positive obligation on it?
Right, making the boys like we do with... If
you don't stand up, what happens?
You could probably put a policy in place, because you're talking very similar to if we see child sexual abuse. We are, as a community, are responsible to actually report that now. So you're saying in a workplace, why don't we put a policy in place that says if you see sexual harassment, you are to report it. I like it.
And to cooperate in all ways possible.
What happens
which means you give the
you
can discipline for not doing it.
You can make it a bit of a community outreach type thing and get it out there.
It's a different way. It's a far more, I'm not going to say negative, but more heavy-handed approach.
What it will show, though, I think, if you say you did that, it's gonna put a lot of light on all those people out there who just do it, not do the good thing, but do the bad thing.
What do you mean?
Well, if you've got a policy out there that says you have to do this, there'll be a posse of peeps who think that that's completely stupid, completely onerous. Why can't we have a laugh in the workplace? Why isn't it okay to,
and they're all just self-identified.
And they're all it's I watched 2 episodes of Obi-Wan.
Yes,
and I don't know how many people have, and I'm not going to give anything away. No, but there is a sort of a statement that goes on over and over again in it, where the Jedi hunt themselves.
Yes, because they out themselves.
Because they out themselves, and they do it because of particular who they are, and I think it'd be a very similar situation.
And
they essentially
highlight. I think the idea of that type of policy is actually quite good.
Interesting, people.
I wouldn't mind.
I haven't seen one. I haven't seen one, but I'd be very interested out there if anybody has a policy in place at their workplace that does this. Does it work?
Because the way I'm seeing it play out in reality is an incident happens. turns out that a lot of people saw it, for example, at a function, a work function. No one said anything about it, and it went on for a while. Not only is the perpetrator going to get in trouble, but the 3 other people that saw it probably had a discussion about what they're going to do about it and chose not to speak up. They get into trouble. Everyone else that finds out, and bear in mind in these types of environments, the scuttlebutt goes far. You'll quickly find a situation where, people are naturally self-interested. They'll see it. They don't want to get fired.
No.
They don't want to get fired. Why would I want to get fired for the actions of someone else?
Yeah. Bring it up.
And I'm going to bring it up. And I absolutely think it's going to be lawful and reasonable. I think if challenged, it'd be more than...
It's fascinating that this is the sort of, these guys aren't getting, it's serious sexual just blows my mind that you can keep your job. Anyway, just I'm going to segue right out of this and go to something completely different, because for some mad reason, COVID vaccinations have come up again in the workplace.
Yeah,
I just don't understand how this is still a thing. But there was a case, and this has highlighted how many of them there are right now. And I haven't seen any of them win. So, and these ones certainly didn't. Mm. But there was a chap that was fired, and this is not for a COVID reason, and he asked the ALEA to help him. And the ALEA, and I had to look this up, is the Australian Licensed Aircraft Engineer Association, to help him. And he was just so stressed, and it was so he just gave it all to this association. So they're, I guess, like a quasi-union.
Yep.
And apparently they were so inundated with COVID complaints that they couldn't help him and filed 40 days late for his unfair dismissal.
Wow.
Crazy.
Wow, that is...
So inundated with COVID. And the commissioner said it was representational error, and he accepted that it was because of the volume of COVID complaints.
Did they put any evidence as to actually what that looks like? Like, is it one where they've got, each solicitor's got
50,000 I don't know, 5,000 I have no idea. The poor sod didn't get another time application over the line, unfortunately.
Right.
But it just shows, and there's a couple more COVID cases in here that are still happening. None of them are winning. It just blows my mind that a organisation that's designed to assist the employee couldn't file this application on time because
there's just so many
COVID claims at the moment. Crazy.
Just think what it must be like to be in the commission.
Wow.
Because you still have to hear it. All right.
Yes, we better call it for the day.
I think that's everything for this week.
It is.
And we'll be seeing you in a couple of weeks.
In a couple of weeks. Thank you everyone for watching the LawCast, and yes, stay safe.
See ya.